Nothing can stop me, no, nothing can. I can, and I will. You keep on watching, don't take your eyes off me. Light that you can't deny. Confident and gracious while stacking up paper on top of her game. 25 hours a day. She's just like sunshine, spreading her power until the last hour. Yeah, spreading her power.
Hi guys, this is Angel with Beauty and Beast in Business. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. And I have Katerina Hankova. She is a certified financial planner with Continuum Consulting Group. And more than that, she specializes in women. She specializes in female financial empowerment, which means she understands the differences in the things that we go through, our questions, and how we need that information in order to continue to empower ourselves and be financially strong. So thank you so much, Katerina, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you today.
I'm so excited because finances is a hot topic for everybody. We all need money and we got to know how to spend it. So, speaking of myself, I recently learned how to really outline our finances, because that's not a discussion I had when I was growing up with my family or even in school. But can you tell us a little bit more about you and how you assist women in financial planning?
Sure. So as a certified financial planner, it allows me to build comprehensive financial plans. And that sounds like a very loaded term, but what that means in reality is that when people have financial goals or even life goals, they kind of need to know whether the actions and the behaviors that they're taking today, whether it's assisting them in moving toward that long-term financial goal. So with financial planning, that's exactly what we do. We build a plan that gives us an insight into their financial future. And if we find out that there are some gaps or they're not hitting the goal that they want, we know that we can make adjustments today to make sure that down the road, they will achieve everything that they have set out.
So that's really important, right? Because they're not coming to you with a loaded knowledge, right? So many times we think, okay, we need to know exactly what this means, what our money is supposed to be doing before we even get to a financial planner. So with you, you're able to sit with us side by side and walk them through every single aspect of the financial planning, where they are now and where they want to go, correct?
That's right. And it includes so many different things. Really, anything that pertains to you financially is included in that conversation. So a lot of times when people hear the term financial planner or financial advisor, they only think of their own investments. But a holistic, comprehensive plan will also include things like something as basic as budgeting, but also estate planning. If you have assets, you have to make sure that they are adequately protected and you're protecting your heirs, children, family, so forth. We also look at risk mitigation, and this could be life insurance, health insurance, property insurance. That's really how comprehensive it is. We also look at your tax returns. A lot of times people will pay taxes on income that doesn't necessarily need to be recognized. And again, they don't know because maybe finance is not their specialty. So we truly look at every single aspect of one's financial life to make sure that each of these small areas are supporting them in moving toward their financial goals.
So I love that you said risk mitigation, because risk is my thing, right? And sometimes risk is a good thing. And sometimes, it can be detrimental. And when we talk about financial risk, there are some financial risks like let's say, investment that you're kind of taking a gamble on, but there's some, background information that we can learn. Then there's also risks that we don't want to take, which is not having the proper insurance to cover when an accident or something unexpected happens. And for me, initially, before we met, when I thought about a financial advisor, I thought, oh, I have to be making, upwards of $250,000, or else I don't need a financial advisor because I'm not making enough money. And then I thought, oh, if my finances are a mess, how embarrassing is that to go to somebody and be like, I don't even know where I'm at. So what do you say to women who have those fears of coming to you?
So what you're describing is very common. And I would also like to say that that's a very old school way of thinking. If we look back 50, 60 years, women really didn't have their own wealth. They were not earning, and it was rather onto their husband, male counterpart, to provide. And with that male energy, very competitive, you may have experienced, a guy has to make a lot of money, goes and gets a financial advisor who helps him invest it and gets him the highest rate of return that's possible. Well, again, this is why women really need someone who thinks more like them, because we don't necessarily care about hitting the highest rate of return. We just want to hit the number that will get us to our goal. So with that said, I would say it doesn't matter how much money you make right now. If you have financial goals and you are serious about achieving them, you probably are a good candidate for getting a financial planner. Because if, let's say, your specialty is medicine and you're not well versed in finance, how would you know whether the contributions you're making to your 401k are enough for your lifestyle when you retire? And this is where the professional comes in. We know how to run the numbers. We know what other assumptions to build into the plan and how to project it out 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
I think that that's really important to the fact that you said, that 401k for retirement. So first of all, let's hit 50 to 60 years. That's not very many years ago. And I think about that all the time. So many people feel like women have been working forever, because it's a norm, or, we occupy, 45%, almost 50% of the workspace.
Right.
So it's very normal for people to believe that, finances are just a regular thing. Women have been doing it. So we take a look at that. It's new to women in this realm of, it's important to have I like to say, board of directors, personal board of directors. That would be, a financial advisor, because we have somebody to sit with us and say, this is how much money you have. This is how much money you should be putting away. So at one of the events I had, we had about 100 women, and I said, how many of you have a 401k? And only 40% raised their hand. And that's for different reasons. It could be that they don't believe they have the finances to put away. It could be that, they're close to retirement and they said, oh, my husband's been doing that. Whatever the reason may be, we know that there are things that occur that could disrupt that, as well as we should still be putting a savings away so that when we retire, we have our own funds. But I do see that you have a divorce financial analyst program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst is a designation that will specialize a professional to assist with a division of assets during a divorce. So as much as this designation is helpful, it's kind of unfortunate that it's needed. And I live in Orange County. The divorce rate in our area is actually higher than the national average. So there are very frequent circumstances where assets are being divided. And the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation really allows the professionals to assess the assets in the correct manner. If you have, you may be dividing an equity in a home, and you may also be dividing, let's say, one of the spouse's IRAs. Each of them have a different taxation. And if it's not built into the plan, the assets might be divided incorrectly. So this designation just educates the professionals on how to assess the asset and also divide the asset.
So you are right. It's one of those things that we don't want to need, but sometimes we do.
Right.
And so, with you having not only this designation, but also having the background of specialty for women, there are things from, illnesses to divorces to, unfortunately, spouses passing. There are all these risks that take place because life happens. What are the things that are dynamic in, if somebody has a financial planner and they have a plan, and one of these things should take place, whether it be a divorce or a passing of a spouse, how much more stable can they be in their finances, or knowledge do they have in their finances?
So being knowledgeable is always a key. And throughout my planning process, I spent a lot of time on education. Again, we're talking about a female demographic. We're not necessarily being educated on finance by our parents, because the old school way of thinking might be she's just going to get married and her male spouse is going to take care of her. We know that that's not the case anymore. Women don't necessarily get married. When women do get married, who's to say they're going to marry a man? They might as well, they might marry a woman, and then you are kind of doubling the problems that we as women face. So with that said, I would say education is key, and I encourage women to get informed on finance. And I completely understand that finance has this very intimidating connotation to its name. And that's why it may deter many women from seeking financial education. Not to mention, if let's say a woman who either lost a spouse or got divorced and now has to figure out finances for herself, if she was to walk into a financial institution, who's behind that desk? It's most likely a man. And I mean, if we had a room of 100 women here, I bet you 70 of them would raise their hand if I asked the question, how many times have any of you ever been patronized by a guy when you ask that question? So we have a little bit of a hurdle when it comes to getting educated on finance, because there aren't very many resources, and the industry is not friendly to us. It has not adjusted to the fact that we earn our own money, we have our own wealth. But don't let that stop you. If there is a man who's not willing to work with you, educate you, and tell you about the things you should be aware of, pay attention to, then seek a professional who will. And I'm not saying all financial professionals who are men are against us. They've been in the industry for too long and just haven't adjusted to the ways. There are some, however, that see the new trend and are more inclusive and welcoming. So whether it's a man or a woman, as long as the professional is willing to spend time with you to educate you on the very important aspects of your financial life, that might be a good fit for you.
Yeah, every one of us handles our finances differently. And so I've been married for a very long time. And initially, everything was in one bucket, right? So my paycheck, his paycheck, everything went into one bucket. As our goals kind of transitioned, as our careers transitioned, our finances transitioned as well, because I may want one thing, he may want another. And so, yes, we have a joint account to cover, bills, home, things like that. But we also have our separate accounts. And so that's the other thing that I tell women about finances is it's okay to, whether you throw it all in and keep it together, or you have a separate, or you have half and half, right? Because we all have those financial goals. What are, let's say, because I did read your blog as well, Plan Like a Woman, which I love, because we do have different likes and dislikes or goals. As I said, my husband and I, my goal might be traveling, his goal might be a boat, or whatever it may be. So with having that mindset of Plan Like a Woman, what top 3 tools or tips do you have for women when they're taking a look at finances that can help them not be so afraid?
Sure. So first, I want to address what you just said about you and your husband's finances. I love the fact that there is a portion of your income that you are in charge of. And I really see that as extremely important. Naturally, there is a bucket where a portion of your income goes to, so you pay just the household bills and stuff like that. But holding on to your own finances, first of all, it's income that you have earned. It's your own money. And that in itself is already very empowering. So you have that in a separate account. And who makes decisions over that account? It's you. Again, that's another empowering factor. And it's really important that women hold on to that. Because what if there is a charity that is extremely important to you, close to your heart, and you want to support it on a monthly basis? You want to have your own finances that you do what you want to do with. Now, when it comes to a boat and bigger purchases like that, you want both spouses to be on board that this really is the right financial decision for the family. So make that decision together. But if you want to save up for it yourself,
Right.
that is so empowering. I love it. I fully support it.
Yeah, and we actually did. We for our anniversary, I was like, I want to go to Europe. And he was like, it wasn't one of his top to-do lists. And I was like, not a problem, because over this next 18 months, I'm saving up for it. So he went with me. I paid for it. It's what I wanted to do. And we celebrated our anniversary that way. But I was like, I knew that I had my funds to save up for what I wanted to do. And it is empowering, because when we have a fear of money, which for many years I did, I had a fear of money, and then I recognized that I couldn't hold on to it.
Right.
Because it would come in and it would go out. And I had this fear of what should I do with it? And so I didn't have a savings account. And then it was this fear of, okay, now I have all the, I do have a savings account and I have this money, but maybe I shouldn't, because the kids need this or that needs. So without really understanding how money could be powerful, how we can utilize it to grow our, ourselves, grow our 401ks, it can be a little scary. So I'm really happy to see how much you include that Plan Like a Woman in your blog, in your motivational speaking, in your teaching.
I love what you just shared. The fact that you saved up for this vacation and you created an opportunity for you and your husband to celebrate your anniversary. I mean, that must be huge. I can only imagine while you're in Europe, looking around, Europe's beautiful, very historical, and just thinking, I did this, I created this, I brought us here. That must have been an amazing feeling, and credit to you, kudos to you for achieving that. You mentioned fear around finances, and that fear is definitely there. And I would say 80 to 90% of women most likely have a fear when it comes to money. And for that reason, that's why I have educational seminars. I want women to know that they can also be financially independent. The fear can be taken away with proper education. And if a woman, let's say, wanted to get started today, she doesn't need to go hire an expensive financial professional, not at all. There are very basic steps that a woman can do on her own before she goes to consult with a professional. Number one, I would encourage this. Yeah, I would encourage a student to do this or an accomplished CEO. Take a pen and paper, sit down, and start thinking about how you want to live your life, whether it's in retirement, in 10 years, if you want to retire early and just live an amazing life. Write down what that vision is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be financial goals. They can be life goals. We know that life goals obviously have a financial aspect to them because you have to somehow pay for your life. But so whatever it is, whatever's in your heart, on your mind, write it down and create a list of goals. It will give you a vision for the future. Now, once you have these goals, you want to take a look at your budget and figure out whether maybe you're overspending in some areas, whether it's eating out, shopping online. We may be paying for subscriptions and memberships that we're not using. We can even reduce our bills by calling our auto insurance and, shopping it around. So figure out whether there are savings that could be implemented to your budget. And once you find out how much you're able to save on a monthly basis, then you can start talking to financial professionals to see whether they can invest those savings so those savings can grow.
When COVID hit, that was something that I did. So COVID hit, all these other kind of things happened in my business world, in my career, which happened to everyone across the globe. But what I did was, as you said, subscriptions. I didn't realize that it's easy to sign on to these subscriptions when you have, when things are normal. And it could be applications that you use, online gaming, it could be television or Hulu, whatever it was. I sat down with all of that. I went through emails. I didn't even recognize, I opened up, I put everything on my credit card so I can kind of keep track. But I looked at my credit card bill that I had not looked at in a while. And I was like, what is that? $4.99, $2.99.
That's
These
right.
things that had been coming out literally for months to years that I had forgotten about. And when that happened, $160 a month is what I got rid of. And I was like, oh my God, I could have done this a long time ago. But
Right.
Again, like you said, until you put pen to paper and you really take a look at what's coming in, what's going out, and having that tracking system, you don't know. I know that you can have this great income. You're like, where'd all the money go? A lot of people don't use ATM or debit, they use cash. And sometimes it's harder to track where that cash goes because it's like, I'm going out to eat, I'm doing whatever. But if you're not keeping your receipts, you don't know what happened to the cash. Or vice versa. If you say, I'm keeping, all my money in the ATM, if you're not tracking it on a weekly or monthly basis, again, you don't know where that money went because it's easy to swipe and you're not seeing it leave your hand. So, having that, I think that is such a top priority, is understanding and tracking, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, whether it is, a little notepad or whatever it is that you have, but tracking what's coming in and what's going out. Let's talk a little bit about, pitfalls of credit card debt, because that's another one. I got my very first credit card. I didn't even have to apply for it. I was a senior in high school, and as I turned 18 and I opened up this envelope and I was like, oh, credit card. And, I didn't have the financial savvy to understand what it meant. I just knew, here's some money and I'll pay it on my paycheck. We have good intentions, and it's not like, it's not like our intention is to defraud the credit card company or to not pay the weekly, whatever. But it's so easy to continue to utilize that, and then you max it out. And even when you're paying your monthly credit card debt, it's at a max and you can't figure out why it's coming down. And I honestly got into that repetition because then you're like, oh, another credit card. Oh, another credit card. You have kids, school clothes need to come. Oh, another credit card. And I did that for years. I'm always honest about this because, yeah, it's embarrassing, but I want other women to know that it is normal and it is okay, to understand that you can be. I literally had, I want to say 5 credit cards. I probably had, I don't know, $35,000 in credit card debt, because I got my first one when I was 18 and I had a part-time job. And then, I had kids, and you get your second one and you get your third one, and it snowballs. But it wasn't until I got into finance, like workers' comp and risk, and really started to learn. I got my college degree and I was like, oh my God, that's what 22 or 25% interest rate means. Can you tell us a little bit about how that compounds, and maybe how women can, 1 or 2 tips on how women can slowly be able to get rid of that debt?
Sure. So credit card debt, it's just, I don't want to say normal, but I feel like most people have had it, have gone through it, had a hard time paying it down. And I'll tell you from my own experience, I've been in finance for almost 14 years. And before I became a financial professional, I also had number of credit cards, kept swiping, because it's the excitement of, oh, that thing I couldn't afford before, well, my credit card limit can provide that.
Yeah.
But we forget we have to pay the balance back, or we are subject to the very high interest rate. So it could be embarrassing. Just know there is a way out, and don't try to hide it. If you have credit card debt and you want to get ahead of it, just admit it, get help, because that in itself is also empowering. But how to get rid of credit card debt? Well, there are a few ways. So number one, I again encourage you to take a look at your budget and see where you can shave off money, save money, so you can put it toward those credit cards. If your credit is still good enough where you can get approved for a new credit card, look for a credit card that will have a zero balance and will allow you to transfer, has a zero interest, and maybe take the balance from your previous credit cards, transfer it onto the new one. If it has a zero interest for 12 or 18 months, you have a great window here to pay the balance down without paying any interest, because you're under this promotion of a zero interest. And that's something I had actually done in the past just to pay it down faster, sooner. I didn't want to continue to pay that high interest, so I consolidated all my debt onto a zero interest credit card. And I have been credit card debt free for a number of years. So there is a way to do it. And it will depend on how much you're earning, whether you can get approved, and how large the debt is also. So every scenario is different, but there definitely are ways to pay it down. I will caution against store cards like your Macy's or Nordstrom's, these charge cards that stores offer you. Maybe they'll have a promotion that if you apply for a card, you'll get 10% off. I'd say if you are disciplined, take advantage of it, but pay the balance off whenever it's due, because the store cards are the ones that have a very high interest rate. So the last thing you want to do is open a Nordstrom's card and just buy a bunch of clothes, not being able to pay it off. Right?
The other thing that they do is you get those, before it used to come in the mail, but now it's via email, right? So you get an email every single day. Today is 15% off. tomorrow's 25% off. If you buy X, $100 by the end of the week, then you get this free coffee mug or whatever it is. And if you are like me or like many other women who are out there, where if you're having a bad day and you're like, yeah, okay, I can buy that, or I can pay that. Or even if you're having a good day and you're like, you know what, $100, that's not bad. I have that in my bank account, right? But then it becomes a residual because they're constantly feeding you those discounts. The other thing I'd like women to know is when we take a look at 20% off, are you saving 20% or are you spending 80% that you didn't intend to spend early in the week, right? So sometimes it's a great deal. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes, say winter's coming and your kids need jackets. So having that 20% off and you're going to buy those jackets anyway, then that's great. But if it wasn't something that you had in your plan, it wasn't something that you had in your finances for that month, then you're not saving 20%, but you're spending 80%.
That's right. So the bottom line is you buy what you need. What you said, your children will need jackets because winter's coming. That's definitely a need. Your children cannot go to school in a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, right? So you buy what you need. But if you get that email that they have a promotion on shoes and you already have 3 pairs of boots, you do not need to go buy a new pair of boots. So for those emails and the promotions, I have a great solution, and you don't have to be a financial expert for this. Just unsubscribe from those emails. I will admit I had an addiction to anthropology, and I was taking advantage of some of those sales, and they always have a 50 or 40% off on the weekends. So I finally had to unsubscribe because I wanted to save more of my money. And we know anthropology can be very enticing.
So let's say maybe we have too high of a credit to income ratio and we can't get a new credit card to consolidate all the others. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know that there's 2 effects. So we have the snowball effect, right? Where we start off slow, and we have what they call the avalanche effect, where maybe you pay off the biggest one. Can you talk a little bit about those 2 options?
Yes, so there have been some recommendations on starting with the highest balance. I look at, let's say you have 5 credit cards. I look at the highest interest, but I also look at the balance. So let's say you owe $10,000 on a credit card at 25%, but then you owe $20,000, let's say, on a credit card at 4%. Believe it or not, there are some credit cards with such a low interest. You want to look at how much you're spending on the interest on each card. Because if you're spending, let's say, $80 versus $200, you need to pay down that card that's costing you the most. So this might take some analysis. I did this for a friend, and I created an Excel spreadsheet. I made a list of all the credit cards, the balances, and then how much each of these credit cards were charging her in interest. And she is making her way down. She's paying it off. I'm super proud of her. But again, she had to go back to her budget and kind of figure out where she's going to spend less to put it toward the credit cards.
That is, to me, that's brilliant, but I had never heard it that way before. And before you and I had spoken last time. So we hear those 2, right? Where we hear either pay off the small one and then you kind of go until you get them all paid off, from the smallest to the largest balance. And then the other is from, okay, you pay off the big one and then you save a large amount when that's paid off, and then you get rid of all the smaller ones. But recognizing that you may not have the biggest balance, but you have a larger interest rate, which means you're paying the bank way more money than you are on another credit card. That's a biggie, because not only are you saving more interest, so that's your own money that you're not paying to the bank, but once you get rid of that, you now have that huge amount of interest or payment that you can then start paying off on the other ones. And I actually utilized that on my school loans after you and I spoke, because I was looking at, okay, if I pay off this little school loan, because I hadn't consolidated my school loans because some of my older ones had very small interest rates. So I thought, I don't want to, consolidate them and end up 3% more on these school loans. But I took that, not just for the credit card, but I took it for my school loans. And I'm now starting to see some progress, because school loans are huge and we need them, when we go to school, and so that we can get our degrees and we have these better careers. But when we're going to pay them back, sometimes if we don't recognize how we're paying them, if we're paying extra money, right? Kind of like your house as well. If you're paying $25 or $50 or $100 extra on your school loans or credit cards per month, if you have multiple ones, where do you want to put that extra money? You want to put it where the interest rate is higher, right?
I would say whichever is costing you the most. So look at the amount that you owe and how much they're charging you to borrow it. Because like I said, if you have a $10,000 loan, but the rate is 7%, and then you may have a $100,000 loan, but the rate is, let's say, 2%, you're paying in dollars different amounts. So I would tackle the most expensive debt first. Because if you're focusing on that cheap debt, you may never get ahead and tackle the expensive debt. And the expensive debt will only balloon, because we know these interest rates, they're compounded.
And okay, yeah, that is something that's so important. And the same thing with school loans. So if you have current school loans, sometimes, that you can consolidate them all so that you're not splitting them up, and you can kind of keep track. Okay, now I have one payment every month, so I know that when I pay extra, this is where it's going. But the other thing that's really important for people to know is, even if we're paying extra on a debt for a home, a car, school loans, how important is it for us to make that phone call and make sure that that extra money we're paying is not paying next month's payment, but actually going down to the base of what we owe?
That it goes toward the principal? That's a really good question. I would have a conversation with the lender to make sure that they are applying the extra amount toward the principal in that specific month. Yes.
Yes, I know that some, with it being online, some online options, they'll actually give that to you. So they'll say, are you paying what's due this month? If you're paying extra, is it principal? Is it interest? Is it, for next month? They give you those options, but many times they don't. And it'll just say pay for this month, and then you pay extra, and they automatically, credit it towards next month. And the reason why they do that is because if they're crediting it towards next month, they can continue that interest rate. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, these are some tips and tools that we want to be able to give you, that they're not overnight successes. They're not going to clear up all your finances in 24 hours. But I'm here to say that these are tips and tools that I have used in my life, in my finances, and they do work. I know that when I went and paid my very last credit card off about 2 years ago, right before I bought my new house, I cried in Bank of America. Like, I didn't recognize, like, I was paying that last payment, and my physical emotions were like these tears. And
Awesome.
the cashier was like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I was like, oh, this is my last payment. Like, I'm going to be debt free. And she was just as excited as I was, like, so when we talk about having that empowerment and that power, when we know that we have full control of our finances, it can really not just boost your finances, but it boosts your self-esteem because you feel like you are knowledgeable. You feel like you have control of your life.
That's so true. And part of why I have number of seminars, and you may have heard me say this, is because I truly believe that if we get a little more confident in one of our aspects of our life, it kind of spills into other aspects, and we just increase this confidence level and get that pep in our step. And it gives us more encouragement and inspiration to tackle other things in our life. You know, let's say we tackle finances and we really want to go for that promotion at our job, or we want to go apply for a new job. It kind of gives us that confidence to kind of achieve higher and higher goals. And I wanted to add one more thing as we are talking about student debt. I advise anyone I talk to, when you're applying for a job, I also teach salary negotiation. So this is where it's coming from. I want to encourage women, first of all, to negotiate your salaries. Don't just accept the offer as it's presented to you. But when you are negotiating your salary, ask about a repayment program, whether they have an assistance for helping you pay off your student loan. That's one. If you have been at your job for a while and you don't have an opportunity to negotiate, maybe ask about a bonus. Or if there is a bonus, ask them whether it can be paid out twice a year as opposed to only once a year. Because the sooner you get this cash, you can throw it toward that student debt. So if you need, extra money, I would go up to your employers and have a conversation about what a great job you have been doing, you deserve a promotion, or you deserve a bonus. And with this increase in your pay, obviously you want to reduce your debt.
I had previously heard of companies that had these educational programs where they say, oh, go get a bachelor's, we'll pay for it if it's in business or whatever it is. Some very few actually will pay for a master's. But recently a friend came to me and said, I applied for this company and they told me, because there was these options of these jobs that he could have taken. And he sat down and he said, one of them said they had a repayment program. They were going to assist up to $5,000 a year in educational debt or school loans that he had already accumulated. And that blew my mind because I thought, I didn't even know companies actually did that. So I'm glad that you brought that up because although, it could be a rarity, there are companies out there that do offer that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think companies recognize that they want to acquire good talent. Well, good talent means they got educated. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a candidate for the role. And education, unfortunately, is extremely expensive in this country. So companies are attracting good talent by promising to help with paying off their student debt. Because when we go to school, we take out a loan to graduate. It's really an investment in ourselves. So we then look attractive to future employers. So when an employer identifies you as a really good candidate or talent, they want to help you with repaying that investment. They are essentially now investing in you.
And the other thing is, as we said about these programs, I do want ladies, if your company says we have a payment program for current or future education, take it. So many times I see people who say, I would like to go to school, but I don't have time, or I want this certification, but I haven't done it yet. So not all employers will pay for education. But many do. And if they do, take them up on their offer. Even if you're taking, one class or whatever, take a look at the criteria, first of all, to make sure that it's part-time, full-time, whatever it is, so that you can accommodate that within your life schedule, home schedule. But if it is one certification course at a time or one class as you're working on a degree, and they're going to pay you or they're going to reimburse you, take them up on that offer, because that is an investment in you. That is an investment in your life, in your career, and eventually in financial empowerment. That's, there's so many options out there that sometimes we don't know about, or sometimes we don't utilize. The other thing, if we're talking about employer benefits, is some employers have benefits for discounts on your cell phone. Some employers have discounts for, if you're going to purchase a new car, whatever it may be. So ladies, reach out to your HR departments or your benefits departments and find out what they have. It could be for medical, could be for monthly pharmacy, and every dollar that you save in those programs that you have, you can continue to either, one, get down your credit card debt or your school loan debt, or two, start putting it towards a 401k or a savings account. Let's talk a little bit in the few minutes that we have left on retirement and 401ks. So we know that we have a Roth, and then we have IRA, we have this pre-tax, post-tax. When I first started putting money away, I did half and half. And I thought, okay, well, I'll put half of it pre-tax and half of it post-tax, because I know when I retire, I've already paid taxes on part of it, right? So if my tax rate right now is, we're just going to say 6%, who knows, in 40 years, my tax rate might be 15%. So if I've already paid those taxes, then it's money that's coming back, and I know $200 means $200. If it's pre-tax, well, guess what? One, we don't know where our tax rate is going to be at that point, but also $200 does not mean $200. $200 means, okay, let me take out the current taxes, and then you get $160.
Right.
How important is it to know that?
Oh, tremendously important. And I want to kind of go back to something you said earlier in our conversation when you spoke about out of 100 women, maybe only 40 of them had a 401k. And your statistic is so spot on. And I don't know if you recall from my presentation, I actually talk about the statistics of how many women enroll in a 401k versus men. And it's like 56-60% of men will enroll versus roughly 40% of women will enroll. And I get that it could be attributed to a number of different reasons. Women, because we are the primary caretaker in most cases, maybe we don't work full-time hours, so we don't qualify for the 401k. Or if we are a single parent, we feel like we have to bring every single dollar home to put food on the table, keep the lights on, and so forth. But again, that goes back to the budgeting, seeing where we can shave off, so we can identify the dollars that can go into the 401k and become invested. Now, if you invest in your regular 401k, not a Roth, then you also get a tax deduction and you pay less in taxes. And as you said, it means that you would pay the taxes later in retirement when you're taking the money out. Now, if you want to do the opposite, meaning pay the tax now, invest it, and then take it out tax-free, that is the Roth version of retirement dollars. And I love that you did half and half at the beginning. Given the information and knowledge you had, that was probably the best decision. But there really isn't a rule of thumb for everyone, because it depends on the tax bracket you are in today. Right. And maybe you do need the tax write-off today. So therefore, you would want to invest into the regular pre-tax 401k or IRA. Now, if you are, let's say, in a 12% bracket, you may want to consider doing the Roth, because you would only be saving 12% today, but you may be saving 30+% down the road. And I'm going to mention something, and I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but there is this rule in the tax code. It's called required minimum distributions. And this rule says that anyone with pre-tax retirement dollars has to start making distributions, meaning taking money out, at age 72. And the IRS even has a worked out table. They tell you how many percent to take out every year, and there is no way around it. You absolutely have to. So what we've been experiencing is when somebody's saving in their 401k for, let's say, 30, 40 years, they might have $1 million. Now, if the IRS tells you you have to take out 3 or 4% a year, you are mandated to take it out. And that this $30,000, $40,000 that you have to take out, that's added to your Social Security, maybe pension you're collecting, or any other income sources that you have. And it may increase the tax that you pay in the future. So again, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but if this is something that's you are concerned about, you may want to start thinking about Roth, because Roth dollars, 401ks and IRAs, they're not subject to this rule, only the pre-tax. So if you are making this decision, I strongly suggest you contact and discuss it with a qualified CPA or a financial professional.
I was just going to say that because, sometimes it can be so overwhelming. Again, we go back to the fear, and there's so many reasons for it. But one, I want to say, ladies, if you don't have a retirement or a 401k, open one tomorrow. Call your HR manager or who benefits or whoever. And it doesn't matter if you are putting $25 per paycheck away or $250 per paycheck away, whatever it may be. We know that not everybody is in a position to put a large amount of money away. But what I want you to know is, one, you are putting that money away if you're doing it pre-tax. If you're in a lower salary or income bracket, then I would recommend, pre-tax, because you're going to get that tax relief. So either you pay it in taxes to the government or you put some away in your 401k and savings. And that $25 per paycheck today is going to grow over the next 15, 20, 30 years. Even if you only have 5 or 10 years left to work, at least you're going to have some money going in so that when you're ready to retire, any income return to you is better than no income return to you. Let's say, Katerina, do you have one last golden nugget for them before we close this up?
Golden nugget. I'll repeat what I said before. Overcome your fear and start becoming knowledgeable on finances. And I'm not saying you have to go be an expert, just overcome the fear and start looking for information.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get together with Katerina after this, and we'll see if we can come up with either some tools or recommended books or something that we can put on my website as well as my social media site, because this is important. This is not just important to me, and it's just not important to Katerina, but it is important to you. It's important to every person. And if you're putting away and your husband or significant other or your kids who are adults and working are not putting away, you need to sit them down tomorrow and say, let's get our finances together. Let's do it as a family, or let's do it alone, but let's do it. So thank you, Katerina, for joining me in this hour. We really hit on some big topics and some important topics, and I am always so grateful for your advice and your recommendations.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And until next Thursday, I hope that you have an amazing week.
Nothing can stop me, no, nothing can. I can, and I will. You keep on watching, don't take your eyes off me. Light that you can't deny. Confident and gracious, we'll stack